big decisions, of course, coming out of the Supreme Court. And a big one yesterday, the Supreme Court in a big gun case in New York. This was a concealed carry case, and New York required that people who want to conceal carry their firearms have to provide a justification or an adequate reason for why they need to conceal carry. A lawsuit was filed basically saying, wait a minute, don't we have a Second Amendment right to carry firearms? Why do we have to provide this additional justification? And the Supreme Court ruled, you don't. The Supreme Court basically said, look, there has been some minimal firearm regulation as part of this country's history. You obviously can't take a gun on a plane. You can't take a gun into the Supreme Court. You can't take a gun into the halls of Congress. So this is not to say that you can have a gun anywhere. But the court basically said that apart from those specific cases that are anchored in the history of this country, there's local states and jurisdictions cannot add burdens onto the Second Amendment and say to citizens, you got to prove this, but show me to our satisfaction that you were really scared. What did you have to be scared about? The court goes, that's none of your business. This guy has a right to carry a gun, end of story. Mm-hmm. So it's a big win.
It's a big win. And, I have a friend who, she's a high-profile person in New York, and many years ago, she was actually scared for her life because she did a lot of things that were back in that time, were seen as anti-Muslim, which actually she was not anti-Muslim. Nevertheless, she was a wanted woman, and she lived in New York City, and she couldn't get a gun to defend herself. So she had to hire security. And so security had to go with her everywhere she went. And it was because she couldn't get a gun in New York. And I'm really happy to see this because the Second Amendment applies to everyone equally in every state. And I know that liberals just love to go after guns, and they like to chip away at the Second Amendment. And I think this is going to actually put a stop to that.
Well, I mean, especially now because, in the wake of the Uvalde shooting, there's a kind of concerted effort to push for gun regulation.
Well, I mean, look at fake Mexican using
Beto.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't call him Beto. I can't call him Robert I just call him fake Mexican because that's what he is. But anyway, he he's using Uvalde as to get votes, and he has actually increased he's
closed the gap.
He's closed the gap, which is ridiculous. People do not fall for it. This guy is crazy. And again, all of these rules or whatever are not going to stop mass shootings. I mean, look at it in New York. Don't they have mass shootings in New York? Hello.
Or in Chicago or in other places that have all kinds of gun regulations.
It does not stop a crazy person. Let me say that again. Taking away guns does not stop a crazy person from getting a gun. The only thing it stops is law-abiding citizens that have the right to bear arms not be able to do it.
I mean, you made the point, we were talking about this, Debbie was saying that, if you have a place, let's just say a store that says, you can't bring your gun in. Okay, so a lawful gun owner is going to go, listen, I'm not going to bring my gun in, I'm going to leave it in the car, I'm going to go in unarmed. But obviously the shooter doesn't think like that. He's not going to show up and go, ooh, I see a sign. I better take my gun and leave it in the car. He's going to go, this is fantastic. Nobody in this store or in this facility is going to be armed. And that means I'm going to be the only one who's going to be armed. And that's when all the trouble begins.
No, exactly. And I don't have her name, but this woman back in, I believe it was 1979, I want to say, it was a Luby shooting in Texas. And she had a weapon in her car, but she couldn't take it. Back in Texas then, you couldn't carry weapons into an establishment of any kind. And so she left her gun in her car, her glove compartment, and a crazy person went into Luby's and shot lots of people, including her parents, killed her parents. Her biggest regret that day was that she didn't have her gun to stop that crazy man from doing what he did.
And Texas reformed its laws after that, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And so anyway, this is what really gets me is that these liberals that come in and try, and I shouldn't even call them liberals because they're not liberal, but they come in and they try to scare people into thinking that the gun itself kills, right? And it's not. It's not. We need our weapons because, as in the Uvalde case, the police was not there right away. Had a teacher had a weapon, she could have stopped him. I mean, I'm not saying that there would have been no carnage, but he would have at least been stopped immediately, right?
I mean, I do think it's very shocking in the Uvalde case when we now learn more about the police. We learned that there were armed police on the scene and they did nothing. And moreover, they didn't even test to see if the door was locked until they finally battered it down when the full kind of team arrived. So the shooter had a kind of open season for about an hour. And even I think the Uvalde police authorities have now admitted
well,
it was a very bad.
And it's, this case, of course, was horrific. It involved children. But there are home invasions where the homeowner, if unarmed, is really just a sitting duck waiting for somebody to come in and do whatever to them, right? They can't wait for 911 to get there. They have to immediately stop the intruder. And in order to do that, you have to be prepared. So do I believe that everyone should go out and get a gun and not learn how to use it? No, of course not. I took training. I know how to use my weapon. I want everybody to learn how to use their weapon because people that are not crazy are not going to go out and do crazy things. And so we need to have a citizenry that is well equipped to defend themselves. That's what the Second Amendment was for. That's what the right to bear arms is all about. And I'm really happy with this SCOTUS decision.
I mean, the Supreme Court is doing something very, very good, which is it's recognizing which rights are in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and it's, I hope, with the abortion decision, going to make clear which rights are not.